A gift of paradise. The ocean breeze carried the scent of jasmine and salt water as Natasha Morgan stepped through the grand entrance of the Grand Oceanic Resort. Her heart fluttered with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. The towering marble pillars and glittering crystal fixtures seemed to belong to a different world entirely, one far removed from her tiny apartment and exhausting work schedule. Her sisters, Ruby and Jade, had scraped together every spare dollar for 6 months to give her this birthday surprise. A full week at one of the most exclusive resorts on the Pacific coast. Natasha clutched her modest suitcase tighter as elegant guests swept past her in flowing designer dresses and tailored suits. She wore her best sundress, a pale yellow cotton piece she had found at a thrift store, and suddenly felt completely out of place. The polished floor reflected back her simple sandals and bare legs, making her acutely aware of how different she looked from everyone else. But she had made a promise to Ruby and Jade that she would enjoy every single moment of this precious gift, and she intended to keep that promise. The check-in process went smoothly, and soon a friendly porter was guiding her through winding garden pathways lined with blooming hibiscus flowers. Her room was in the east wing, he explained, with a partial ocean view. When Natasha finally stepped into her suite, she gasped. The space was larger than her entire apartment. Crisp white linens covered a king-sized bed, French doors opened onto a private balcony, and the bathroom featured a rainfall shower that looked like something from a luxury magazine. She dropped her suitcase and spun in a slow circle, committing every detail to memory. An unwelcome surprise. After changing into her swimsuit cover-up and applying a touch of mascara, Natasha decided to explore the resort grounds. The main pool area drew her attention immediately. Surrounded by swaying palm trees and cushioned lounge chairs, the infinity pool seemed to blend seamlessly with the ocean horizon beyond. Guests lounged in the afternoon sun, sipping colorful cocktails and laughing in carefree tones that spoke of lives without financial worry. Natasha found an empty chair near the edge of the pool area, far from the clusters of glamorous guests, and settled in with the mystery novel she had brought from home. The sun warmed her skin, and for the first time in months, she felt her shoulders begin to relax. This week would be perfect. She would forget about her 3 jobs, her student loan payments, and the constant stress of making ends meet. Then she heard a voice that turned her blood to ice. Natasha Morgan. I cannot believe my eyes. She looked up slowly, her stomach dropping as Brandon Hartley appeared before her. Her ex-boyfriend looked even more polished than she remembered. His designer polo shirt probably cost more than her monthly grocery budget, and his styled hair gleamed with expensive product. The smile on his face held that familiar edge of superiority that had slowly chipped away at her confidence during their 2 years together. Brandon, she managed to say, keeping her voice steady. What are you doing here? Corporate incentive trip, he replied, gesturing toward a group wearing matching resort badges. My firm rewards top performers with luxury getaways. Paradise Cove has exclusive partnerships with Fortune 500 companies. His eyes traveled over her simple cover-up and drugstore sunglasses. I have to say, this place seems a bit out of your price range. Finally saved up enough from waitressing? The casual cruelty in his words stung exactly as he intended. Before Natasha could formulate a response, a statuesque blonde woman appeared at his side, linking her arm possessively through his. She wore a white designer bikini that showed off her model-perfect figure, and diamonds sparkled at her ears and wrist. Brandon, darling, who is this? The woman asked, her tone dripping with false sweetness. Victoria, this is Natasha. An old friend. Brandon's dismissive tone reduced their entire relationship to something insignificant. Natasha, this is Victoria Blake. My fiancée. A reckless decision. The word hit Natasha like a physical blow. Fiancé. Brandon had told her repeatedly during their relationship that he was not ready for serious commitment, that marriage was years away, that she needed to be more patient and understanding of his career ambitions. Yet here he stood with another woman, ready to commit to everything he had denied Natasha. We just got engaged last month in Monaco, Victoria added, extending her left hand to display a diamond ring that could have paid off all of Natasha's debts. Brandon planned the most romantic proposal on a private yacht. It was absolutely magical. Natasha felt her cheeks burn with humiliation. She could see the pity and smugness in their eyes, could sense them mentally cataloging all the ways she had failed to measure up to Brandon's standards. The words escaped her mouth before she could stop them. Actually, I am here with my fiancé too. The lie hung in the air between them like smoke. Brandon's eyebrows rose in surprise, and Victoria's perfect smile faltered for just a moment. Natasha's heart hammered against her ribs. What had she just done? Why was she digging herself into this ridiculous hole? Your fiancé? Brandon's voice dripped with skepticism. That is quite the coincidence. Where is this mysterious fiancé of yours? Natasha's mind raced frantically as her eyes swept across the pool area, desperately searching for any escape from this nightmare. That was when she saw him. He sat alone at a corner table beneath a cluster of palm trees, focused intently on his laptop. Even from a distance, Natasha could see he was extraordinarily handsome. Dark hair fell across his forehead in a casual style that somehow looked both effortless and expensive. His strong jaw and broad shoulders were highlighted by a fitted black shirt, and the watch on his wrist gleamed with understated luxury. He belonged here, carried himself with the kind of quiet confidence that came from never having to prove anything to anyone. Without thinking, driven purely by wounded pride and desperation, Natasha pointed directly at him. There, she said, her voice surprisingly steady. That is my fiancé. Brandon and Victoria turned to look. The stranger, sensing eyes on him, glanced up from his laptop. His gaze met Natasha's across the crowded pool deck, and confusion flickered across his striking features. Those eyes were a remarkable shade of gray-blue, sharp and intelligent. Excuse me, Natasha said quickly, already moving toward him on shaking legs. I should go say hello. She walked across the pool deck feeling like she was moving through a dream. Her mind screamed at her to turn around, to admit the lie, to preserve what little dignity she had left. But her feet kept moving, carrying her closer to the handsome stranger who was about to become either her salvation or her complete humiliation. He watched her approach with a mixture of curiosity and wariness, slowly closing his laptop. Up close, he was even more striking. Those gray-blue eyes studied her with an intensity that made her feel both exposed and strangely safe. His features were carved and masculine, and there was something about the way he held himself that suggested both power and control. Natasha reached his table and leaned down, speaking in a desperate whisper that tumbled out in a rush. I know this sounds completely insane, but I just told my ex-boyfriend that you are my fiancé. He is watching us right now with his new fiancée, and I panicked. Please just play along for 2 minutes. I will explain everything. I will owe you forever. I am begging you. The stranger blinked once, his expression unreadable. Then, impossibly, a slow smile spread across his face, transforming his features from merely handsome to absolutely devastating. Well, he said, his voice deep and smooth like aged whiskey, this is certainly the most interesting thing that has happened to me all week. He stood, towering over her by at least 6 inches, and extended his hand with natural grace. Alex Sterling, he said, his eyes dancing with amusement. Apparently, I am your fiancé. Playing the part, Natasha stared at Alex Sterling's outstretched hand, her pulse racing so fast she felt lightheaded. This was absolutely crazy. She had just pulled a complete stranger into her messy personal drama based on nothing but panic and bruised pride. He was going to laugh in her face, call security, or simply walk away and leave her standing there mortified. Instead, he stood before her with that captivating smile, waiting patiently as if they had all the time in the world. She placed her trembling hand in his, and he gently pulled her closer, his other arm sliding around her waist with surprising ease. The gesture felt natural, practiced, as though they had embraced 1,000 times before. His cologne was subtle and sophisticated, something with hints of sandalwood and citrus that made her head spin. Up close, she could see flecks of silver in his blue-gray eyes and the faint shadow of stubble along his jaw. "Brandon is still watching," she whispered through clenched teeth, forcing herself to maintain a bright smile. The one in the cream polo shirt with the blonde woman practically glued to his side. Alex's lips curved with barely concealed amusement. "I see them. The gentleman looks rather stunned. Should I kiss you to really make this convincing?" "What? No." Natasha felt her face flame hot. "Just maybe hold my hand or something normal people do." "Hand-holding it is," Alex agreed easily, releasing her waist but keeping her hand firmly clasped in his. His palm was warm and strong, his fingers threading through hers with the comfortable familiarity of longtime lovers. "Shall we sit? You look like you might collapse any second." They settled at his table, and Alex immediately shifted his chair closer to hers, creating an intimate atmosphere that screamed established couple. He was remarkably good at this, Natasha thought wildly, though she could not fathom why someone like him would ever need to pretend anything. "So," Alex said conversationally, his thumb tracing gentle circles on the back of her hand in a gesture that sent unexpected tingles up her arm. "I assume there is quite a story behind this particular brand of chaos you have brought into my afternoon." "I am so incredibly sorry," Natasha began, but he waved her off with his free hand. "Do not apologize yet. I am genuinely intrigued. Besides, I was drowning in quarterly financial reports and desperately needed a distraction. You have provided outstanding entertainment value already." Before Natasha could respond, Brandon's sharp voice cut through the poolside chatter. "Natasha, you have not properly introduced us to your fiancé." She turned to find Brandon and Victoria standing beside their table, both wearing expressions of thinly veiled suspicion. Her stomach twisted into knots, but Alex squeezed her hand reassuringly before standing with fluid grace. "Alex Sterling," he said smoothly, extending his hand to Brandon. His handshake was firm and confident, the kind that established quiet dominance without being overtly aggressive. "You must be Brandon. Natasha has mentioned you." "Has she?" Brandon's eyes narrowed with barely concealed irritation. "Strange, because she never mentioned being engaged when we were together just 8 months ago." 9 months, Natasha corrected automatically, her voice steadier than she felt. "And why would I mention something that had not happened yet?" Alex pulled her to her feet and wrapped his arm around her shoulders in a protective gesture that felt surprisingly genuine. "We met shortly after Natasha moved on from you. Sometimes the right person appears exactly when you need them most." The words were perfectly chosen, and Natasha felt a rush of gratitude mixed with growing confusion. Who was this man, and why was he so effortlessly good at improvisation? "What do you do, Alex?" Victoria asked, her calculating eyes assessing his expensive watch and custom-fitted clothes with the practiced evaluation of someone who measured people by their net worth. "I run a technology consulting firm," Alex replied with casual ease. "Corporate restructuring and digital transformation projects mostly. Rather boring stuff, actually." "Sounds successful," Brandon said, and Natasha detected clear competition creeping into his tone. "Where is your company based?" "Primarily San Francisco, though I travel constantly for client meetings. Natasha and I are actually discussing where we want to settle permanently after the wedding." Alex looked down at her with such convincing affection that she almost believed it herself. "She loves the ocean, so we are considering somewhere coastal." Natasha's mind reeled. He was creating an entire fictional future for them with details she had never provided. How did he know she loved the ocean? How could he speak so naturally about a relationship that had begun exactly 3 minutes ago? "How romantic," Victoria said, though her tone suggested she found it anything but believable. "When exactly is this wedding of yours?" "We have not set a specific date yet," Natasha said quickly, finding her voice. "We are taking our time and enjoying being engaged." "Smart approach," Alex agreed, his fingers gently stroking her shoulder. After all, when you know you want to spend your life with someone, there is no rush to make it official on paper. The commitment itself is what truly matters, not the ceremony or the paperwork. An unexpected proposal. Brandon's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, and Natasha recognized that familiar look. He hated being outmaneuvered in conversation, despised when someone else held the social advantage. Alex had just dismissed the importance of formal engagement in a way that made Brandon and Victoria's elaborate Monaco proposal seem unnecessarily showy and insecure. "Well, we should let you two enjoy your afternoon," Brandon said stiffly, his smile not reaching his eyes. "Perhaps we will see you both at dinner tonight. The resort is hosting a welcome reception for all guests in the grand ballroom." "We will be there," Alex said confidently, keeping his arm around Natasha until the couple walked away. Only when Brandon and Victoria disappeared from view did Alex finally release her. He sank back into his chair and ran a hand through his dark hair, a gesture that somehow made him look even more attractive. "So that was your ex-boyfriend," he said, his tone thoughtful. "The one who made you feel desperate enough to invent a fiancé on the spot?" "Yes," Natasha admitted, collapsing into her own chair as the adrenaline began to fade. "I know it was incredibly stupid. I just could not stand there and let him pity me like I was some tragic figure he had outgrown and upgraded from." "He is a fool," Alex said flatly, his gray-blue eyes sharp with assessment. "And she is exactly the type of woman men like him collect. Beautiful, accomplished, and utterly interchangeable. A trophy to display at corporate events." Natasha looked at him with surprise. "That is quite a harsh judgment based on a 5-minute conversation. I am exceptionally good at reading people. It is a significant part of what I do professionally." He leaned back, studying her with those penetrating eyes. "So, Natasha, what do we do now? Because I assume you did not plan beyond the initial desperate lie." "I honestly have no idea," she confessed, feeling foolish. "I thought maybe I could just avoid them for the rest of the week, but clearly that plan is not going to work." "No, it definitely will not work," Alex agreed. He was quiet for a long moment, his fingers drumming thoughtfully against the table. "Here is what I propose. I will be your fiancé for the entire week. We will make it convincing enough that your ex-boyfriend never questions the story. In exchange, you help me with something." Natasha's wariness flared immediately. "Help you with what exactly?" "There is a series of business dinners and networking events happening at this resort all week. Potential investors, corporate partners, that sort of thing. I usually attend these functions alone, which unfortunately makes me a constant target for aggressive networking attempts and awkward romantic setups from well-meaning colleagues." He paused, his expression slightly rueful. "Having a fiancé would provide excellent cover and make the entire experience far more tolerable. So you want to use me as a human shield against business predators and matchmaking attempts?" "Essentially, yes. We would both benefit significantly from this arrangement. You get to show your ex-boyfriend that you have moved on spectacularly and found someone successful. I get to enjoy my evenings without constantly deflecting unwanted attention and uncomfortable conversations. It is mutually beneficial deception." Natasha knew she should say no. Every rational part of her brain screamed that this was a terrible idea with disaster written all over it. Nothing good could possibly come from building more elaborate lies on top of her initial panic-induced fabrication. But she glanced across the pool area to where Brandon and Victoria sat with their heads together, clearly engaged in gossipy conversation. They were probably dissecting every perceived flaw in her story, analyzing every detail to find the cracks. "1 week," she said finally, meeting Alex's steady gaze. "And we absolutely need clear ground rules for this arrangement." Alex's smile was quietly triumphant. "Agreed completely. Let us grab lunch somewhere private and discuss the specific terms of our temporary engagement." Getting to know each other, they ended up at a secluded beachside cafe tucked away from the main resort buildings. The small restaurant featured just a dozen tables scattered across a wooden deck overlooking pristine white sand and turquoise water. Alex ordered grilled fish and fresh salad while Natasha chose a simple pasta dish, very aware of her limited budget despite his obvious wealth. "First rule," Natasha said once their food arrived. "We need to know basic information about each other. Brandon will definitely ask questions, and we cannot afford to contradict each other or look unprepared." "Smart thinking," Alex agreed, pulling out his phone. "Let me take some notes. Tell me about yourself. The real story, not the performance version." Natasha took a deep breath and began sharing her life. She told him about growing up with her two younger sisters after their parents died in a car accident when she was 19. She explained how she had taken on multiple jobs to support Ruby and Jade, putting her own college education on hold so her sisters could finish high school and eventually attend university. She described her current situation working as a waitress, a bookstore clerk, and a weekend nanny, barely making ends meet but determined to give her sisters the opportunities they deserved. Alex listened without interruption, his expression growing increasingly serious as her story unfolded. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "Your sisters saved for months to give you this vacation," he said softly. It was not a question. 6 months, Natasha confirmed, her eyes stinging with unexpected tears. "They wanted me to have 1 week where I did not have to worry about bills or work schedules. 1 week to just breathe and be happy. And then your ex-boyfriend showed up and tried to ruin it." "Brandon has a talent for making me feel small," Natasha admitted. "During our relationship, he constantly criticized my clothes, my education, my job, my ambitions. He made it clear I was not sophisticated enough or successful enough for the life he wanted to build. Breaking up with me was his way of upgrading to someone better." Alex's expression hardened. "He is an insecure man who built himself up by tearing you down. That says everything about his character and nothing about your worth." The fierce certainty in his voice surprised her. "You do not even know me. I know you sacrificed your own future to raise your sisters. I know you work 3 jobs and still find reasons to smile. I know you have more strength and grace than Brandon will ever possess." He paused, his gaze holding hers. "Now let me tell you my story, so we are even." Alex explained that he had built his technology consulting firm from nothing over the past 8 years. He specialized in helping struggling companies restructure and modernize, which had made him wealthy but also left him little time for personal relationships. He was 32 years old, had never been married, and found most of the women in his social circle more interested in his bank account than in him as a person. "So this fake engagement actually solves a real problem for you," Natasha observed. "It does," Alex admitted. "Plus, I genuinely want to help you. Call it a character flaw, but I have always hated bullies, and your ex-boyfriend definitely qualifies." As the afternoon sun shifted lower in the sky, they continued talking, establishing their cover story and learning the details that would make their performance believable. Somewhere during that conversation, Natasha realized she was actually enjoying herself. Alex was intelligent and funny, with a dry wit that caught her off guard and made her laugh in ways she had not laughed in months. When they finally left the cafe, Alex took her hand again, and this time it felt less like an act and more like something natural. Something that might become dangerously real if she was not extremely careful with her heart. The Grand Ballroom. The resort's Grand Ballroom glittered like something from a fairy tale that evening. Crystal chandeliers cast dancing light across polished marble floors, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the ocean where the sunset painted the sky in shades of crimson and gold. Guests mingled in elegant evening wear, their laughter and conversation creating a sophisticated symphony of wealth and privilege. Natasha stood before the mirror in her suite, smoothing down the front of her dress with nervous hands. It was the nicest thing she owned, a simple navy blue cocktail dress she had found at a consignment shop 2 years ago. Compared to the designer gowns she knew other women would be wearing, it felt painfully inadequate. She had done her best with her makeup and hair, pulling her dark brown waves into a soft updo, but doubt gnawed at her confidence. A knock at her door made her jump. When she opened it, Alex stood in the hallway wearing a perfectly tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than her entire wardrobe combined. His hair was styled back from his face, emphasizing those striking gray-blue eyes, and he looked every inch the successful billionaire he apparently was. His eyes widened slightly when he saw her, and something warm flickered in their depths. "You look absolutely beautiful," he said softly, and the sincerity in his voice made her cheeks flush. "You do not have to say that," Natasha replied, suddenly self-conscious. "I know this dress is not exactly designer quality." Alex stepped closer, gently lifting her chin so she had to meet his gaze. "I meant every word. You could wear a paper bag and still outshine every woman in that ballroom. Your beauty comes from something deeper than expensive clothes." The intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. For a moment, she forgot this was all pretend, forgot they were playing roles for an audience. The way he looked at her felt achingly real. "We should go," she managed to whisper, breaking the spell before she did something foolish like believe in fairy tales. Alex offered his arm, and they walked together through the resort gardens toward the ballroom. His hand covered hers where it rested in the crook of his elbow, warm and steady and reassuring. As they approached the entrance, Natasha took a deep breath, steeling herself for the performance ahead. The ballroom was even more spectacular up close. Waiters circulated with champagne and elaborate hors d'oeuvres while a live jazz quartet played sophisticated melodies from a raised platform. Natasha spotted Brandon and Victoria immediately. They stood near the center of the room, clearly holding court among a group of well-dressed professionals. "Ready?" Alex murmured against her ear, his breath sending unexpected shivers down her spine. "As ready as I will ever be," she replied. They entered together, and Natasha was acutely aware of heads turning to watch them. Alex commanded attention effortlessly, moving through the crowd with the natural confidence of someone accustomed to these social settings. He kept her close to his side, his hand resting possessively on the small of her back as he navigated them toward the bar. "Champagne?" he asked, and she nodded gratefully. As Alex ordered their drinks, a distinguished older gentleman approached with an eager smile. "Alex Sterling. I was hoping to run into you this week. Thomas Pemberton, we met briefly at the tech conference in Seattle last year." "Of course, Thomas," Alex said smoothly, shaking his hand. "Good to see you again. Allow me to introduce my fiancée, Natasha Morgan." "Charmed," Thomas said, taking her hand briefly. "You are a lucky woman. Alex here is one of the brightest minds in the business world." "I am well aware," Natasha said, smiling up at Alex with what she hoped looked like genuine adoration. "He amazes me every day." The pleased surprise in Alex's eyes told her she had played her part well. They spent the next hour mingling, with Alex introducing her to various business associates and potential clients. To her surprise, Natasha found herself actually enjoying the conversations. Alex had a gift for making people feel heard and valued, and he included her naturally in every discussion, never making her feel like decorative arm candy. Confrontation and truth. Brandon finally approached as they stood near one of the large windows overlooking the darkening ocean. Victoria clung to his arm, her expression sharp with barely concealed hostility. "Alex, Natasha," Brandon said with forced cheerfulness. "Enjoying the evening?" "Very much," Alex replied easily. "The resort has outdone themselves with this event." "Indeed." Brandon's eyes were calculating as they moved between Natasha and Alex. "I have been thinking about your engagement all afternoon. It occurred to me that I know absolutely nothing about how you two met. Care to share the story?" Natasha felt her stomach clench, but Alex answered without hesitation. "We met at a bookstore, actually. Natasha works at this charming independent shop in the city, and I had gone in looking for a specific business biography. She not only found the book I wanted but recommended 3 others that ended up being far more valuable. We started talking, and I found myself inventing reasons to come back to that bookstore every week. The story flowed so naturally that Natasha almost believed it herself. She picked up the thread, adding details they had discussed earlier. He always came in on Tuesday afternoons during my shift. At first, I thought he was just a book enthusiast, but eventually, he asked me to coffee. How romantic, Victoria said, her tone dripping with sarcasm. And when exactly did this courtship begin? About 7 months ago, Alex said, his arm tightening slightly around Natasha's waist. Why all the questions, Brandon? You seem unusually interested in my relationship. Just curious, Brandon replied, but his jaw was tight with irritation. It seems remarkably convenient that Natasha found herself a wealthy fiancé so quickly after our breakup. Almost too convenient. Are you suggesting something? Alex's voice dropped to a dangerous quiet that made several nearby guests glance their way nervously. I am suggesting, Brandon said, emboldened by champagne and jealousy, that this whole engagement seems fabricated. Natasha was working 3 minimum wage jobs 9 months ago. Now suddenly she is engaged to a tech millionaire and vacationing at luxury resorts? Forgive me for being skeptical. The accusation hung in the air like poison. Natasha felt her cheeks burn with humiliation and anger. Several guests had stopped their own conversations to watch the unfolding drama. You are absolutely right, Brandon, she said quietly, her voice trembling but clear. This engagement is fake. I lied when I saw you at the pool yesterday because I could not stand the pity in your eyes. I could not bear to be the pathetic ex-girlfriend who had not moved on while you flaunted your perfect new relationship. Gasps rippled through the nearby crowd. Victoria's eyes widened with vindictive triumph. Brandon's face flushed with angry satisfaction. But before anyone could speak, Alex turned to Natasha, his expression unreadable. The engagement started as fake, he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. But somewhere over the past 2 days, it stopped being pretend for me. Natasha's breath caught as Alex took both her hands in his gray-blue eyes intense and focused entirely on her face. I agreed to play the role of your fiancé because I thought it would be mutually beneficial, he continued, his voice rough with emotion. But spending time with you, learning your story, seeing your strength and kindness and incredible spirit, I realized something. I do not want to pretend anymore. I want this to be real. Alex, she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. You do not have to do this. You do not have to rescue me. I am not rescuing you, he said fiercely. You are the strongest person I have ever met. You do not need rescuing. But I am hoping, maybe, you might want a partner. Someone who sees your worth and wants to build something genuine with you. The ballroom had gone completely silent. Every eye was fixed on them, but Natasha barely noticed. All she could see was Alex, this incredible man who had appeared in her life like magic and somehow seen past all her defenses to the person she truly was. A new beginning. Yes, she said, her voice breaking with joy and disbelief. Yes, I want that too. These past 2 days with you have been the most alive I have felt in years. I was terrified because I thought it was all pretend, but my feelings became real so quickly. Alex smiled, that devastating smile that transformed his entire face, and pulled her into his arms. When he kissed her, the ballroom erupted in applause and cheers. The kiss was gentle and passionate and full of promise, tasting of champagne and hope and new beginnings. When they finally broke apart, breathless and grinning, Natasha caught sight of Brandon's face. He looked stunned and deflated, all his smugness evaporated. Victoria had released his arm and was staring at him with dawning suspicion, clearly re-evaluating the man she had agreed to marry. But Natasha found she no longer cared about Brandon or his opinion. She had spent too long letting his judgment define her worth. Alex had shown her in just 2 days what real partnership looked like. Respect, support, genuine interest in who she was rather than trying to mold her into someone else. I should tell you something, Alex said quietly as the crowd's attention shifted back to their own conversations. I am actually not just wealthy. The business reports were not exaggerating. I am a billionaire, Natasha. My company is worth close to $3 billion. She blinked at him in shock. 3 billion? With a B? With a very large B, he confirmed, looking almost nervous. Does that change things? I know it can be overwhelming. Natasha thought about it for a moment, then shook her head. It is terrifying, honestly. Our worlds are so different. But the man I fell for over the past 2 days was not his bank account. It was the person who listened to my story without judgment, who made me laugh, who treated me like an equal even when he could have looked down on me. That man is who I want to know better, regardless of how many zeros are in his bank account. Relief flooded Alex's features. Good, because that man is desperately hoping you will stay here for the rest of the week and let him take you on proper dates. Real ones, not fake performances. I would love that, Natasha said, her heart feeling lighter than it had in years. Over the next few days, they explored the resort together as a real couple. Alex showed her sides of himself he normally kept hidden, his dry humor and surprising vulnerability and deep passion for his work. Natasha opened up about her dreams, the education she had postponed, her hopes for her sister's futures. They stayed up late talking on the beach, watching sunrise together, sharing meals and stories and slowly building something genuine and strong. Brandon and Victoria left the resort 2 days early after a spectacular argument in the dining room. Natasha heard through resort gossip that Victoria had discovered Brandon had been exaggerating his position at his firm and that the engagement ring was actually cubic zirconia, not diamond. The poetic justice was not lost on her. On their final evening at the resort, Alex and Natasha walked along the beach hand in hand as stars appeared in the darkening sky. The ocean whispered against the sand, and the air smelled of salt and jasmine. I need to go back to San Francisco when this week ends, Alex said quietly. But I want you to come with me. Not to live with me immediately, that would be too fast. But to explore this relationship properly. I will help you find an apartment, support you going back to school if that is what you want. No strings attached except the chance to see where this goes. Natasha stopped walking and turned to face him, her heart pounding. Alex, I cannot let you just pay for my life. That feels wrong. Then consider it an investment, he said, cupping her face gently in his hands. An investment in us, in our future. You have spent years sacrificing for your sisters. Let someone take care of you for once. Let me be your partner in building the life you deserve. She looked into those gray-blue eyes that had become so dear to her and saw nothing but sincerity and hope. This was not Brandon trying to control and diminish her. This was Alex offering support while respecting her independence and dreams. Okay, she whispered. Yes. Let us see where this goes. He kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise. Somewhere in the distance, fireworks began exploding over the ocean, the resort's final celebration. But Natasha barely noticed the colorful lights painting the sky. She was too focused on the man in her arms, the unexpected love that had grown from a desperate lie into something beautifully, impossibly real. 3 months later, when Alex proposed for real with a ring he had designed specifically for her, Natasha said yes without hesitation. Their wedding a year later was small and intimate, with Ruby and Jade as her bridesmaids, tears of joy streaming down all their faces. The fake engagement that began with panic and pride had transformed into the truest love Natasha had ever known. Sometimes, she reflected, the best things in life come from the most unexpected places. You just have to be brave enough to take the leap and trust that someone will be there to catch you when you fall. And Alex had caught her, completely and perfectly, just as she had caught him in return. The end.